Hey, Mr. Pond Boss,
There he goes.
tell me what to do
It happened right this time.
to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk hanging out with my dear friend Mike Chico Garcia from Seguin, America. Matter of fact, Chico you started the Keep Austin Fishing Facebook page, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, we started a page. It was going to be in about 2012, 2011, I believe, and it got really, really popular quickly. But what happened was Bo was pretty insightful and made it like a local resource where it was a clearinghouse for fishing stuff. And Facebook recognized it and gave us some awards and kind of elevated us up a little bit on the ladder and asked to help share with people what we were doing. So it's pretty cool.
Ooh, let me turn it
Got some
on.
double audio there. Yeah, I'm filling it in. I'm filling the segment for Bob here as he plays with the tools.
Yeah,
like it's radio or something.
Yeah, like I need a producer. I really do. Hey, you guys know the drill. Welcome. Glad you're here. Pond Boss Magazine. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comment section. Click like. Share this to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and a Pond Boss t-shirt that Leanne tells me is a really, really good t-shirt. There's John Funk, Mid-Michigan. Tim Stewart, I don't know if he's in New Jersey, Arizona, California, or Florida. I would pick Florida. That's where I'd pick. There's Wayne and Josie at their Wednesday night date watching this show.
They come together on Wednesdays. Huh?
Yeah, they do. Wherever they are. Mm-hmm. There's Frank James. When's the next Pond Boss Magazine come out? Oh, man, I got to wince. We are late, and Leanne wanted me to tell everybody we're late. It didn't hit the mailbox until tomorrow, and that's my fault because I didn't get it done on time. Plus, this is the issue that we do our annual resource guide. So between me being late and the resource guide taking more time than it should have, we're running late. But the magazine will be in the mail stream, probably in the mail stream by... I can't imagine it being in the mail stream any later than Monday, but it ought to be going out here pretty quick. Billy Granholm from McLeod Aquatics in northwestern Illinois is checking in. Doug Schmidt from Nebraska. We always have a cool around the nation audience. I love that.
Very cool, yeah.
Justin Ludwig. Yep. This is Chico. Tom Davis, Ohio. Mike McPherson, Indiana. Christy Berg, Kansas. Dustin Crawley got the deal. He knows what to do. John Funk, you talked about calcium carbonate levels, but at the upper levels of 180 or more, what is the effect for northern ponds? My levels are around 200, 220. We've got a chemistry question already.
Balance there, huh?
You want that?
No, that's yours for sure.
All right.
Acid-base balance.
Well, what happens when the alkalinity gets up, around above 150, it has a tendency to bind your phosphorus. So in northern states, that's not a bad thing. That's really a pretty good thing. I'm going to drop this down a little bit. I'm going to lose part of the Pond Boss sign so we can see us a little bit better. And so what happens is the alkalinity, the calcium carbonate dissolved into the water, tends to capture and sequester phosphorus. So like in the north, that's a good thing. In the south, it's not as good a thing because you want some of that phosphorus to turn into phytoplankton. And so what it does is it affects the fertility level of the water. That's what it does. There's Michael Ehrig checking in from Iowa. Billy Bates checking in. If I remember, Billy's up in Maryland, I believe. Jason Jones, Indiana. Michael Gray, Nashville, Tennessee. Christy Berg, snowing heavily. Danny Mack. Look at there. There's Danny Mack.
Yeah, it's not snowing down there.
Not snowing in San Antonio.
I just came from there.
Terry Dooley from OKC. Yeah, I know. John Funk, you know what? I know. The magazine will be in 7 weeks. Between Bob Lusk and the United States Postal Service, you're going to be getting back-to-back magazines within just a few days. I kind of feel bad about it, but I don't know what to do about it. There's Jim Norquist, another Northwest Illinois friend. Fred Biggerman checking in from Brownstown, Illinois. Look at there. There's our Louisiana friends. Pristine Pond Solutions, Doug Cusick, Tommy Smith.
Man, you have a community hopping here.
I'm telling you,
good.
Let me tell you about Tommy Smith. Tommy Smith is a retired police officer from Honolulu, Hawaii,
Oh, wow.
who grew up in Georgia.
Okay.
So when he retired, he and his Hawaiian wife, who grew up in Hawaii, moved to Georgia. So I don't know if it's a culture shock for both of them, but
yeah, it's culture.
yeah, and Tommy spearheaded a drive to bring the pond boss to Hawaii one year, which is a pretty funny story. I don't know if I ever told this story to Tommy, but they wanted me to come and consult on a lake that they do some work with to stock fish. It's the only lake I've ever seen in the world that has peacock bass, largemouth bass, and listen to this, smallmouth bass.
Oh, wow.
That's because at one end of the lake, it was built by Dole Pineapple to water the pineapple crops that don't exist there anymore. And so when it rained in the mountains, cold water would come down the mountains, but when it rained in the city, water would come off the roads, it would be warm. Right. So one end of the lake's warm, one end of the lake's cold coming in, so it supported all these different kinds of fish. And they have
they were those in Hawaii.
Yeah.
There's nothing native to Hawaii. They were all brought in.
That's right.
They were all
Every bit of them. Yeah. All that stuff was brought in.
It's a long way for peacocks.
Yes. Yeah. It's a long way for largemouth bass and smallmouth bass. But, most of those were brought in by military personnel, if you think about it, But anyway...
You have to fly something like that in.
Yeah, which they have airplanes.
Yeah, they've got jets too. Yeah,
and so what would happen is, on this deal, we kind of worked out a plan where we were going to see if we could sample pieces of the lake with a big, long seine. Tommy and his crew bought a big seine, had it shipped over there. So we did some seine pulls around different areas of the lake, and we caught more plecostomus fish than I've ever seen in my entire life. But the funny story to me was I was going to fly over there like on a Thursday and fly back on a Monday, right? So they were going to cover the airplane ticket and a little bit of consulting fees, right? So I told Debbie I'm going to run out to Hawaii for a few days, and
yeah, I can imagine. And you're not going.
Yeah.
You're not going.
Well, I didn't have time to say that. I didn't have time to say that at all. She said, "When are we leaving?" And I said, "Well, we got to work out the date. It's going to be in February." And so she said, "And you're only planning for us to stay for how long?" I said, "Well, I was crap. I'm not that smart. I should have thought about this a little bit more." Well, make a long story short, we ended up going to Maui, and we went to Honolulu, hung out with Fred and Connie Bingaman there because they had a condo timeshare thing rented out. So we turned a business trip into a vacation, and it was really fun. I got to hang out with Tommy and track Tommy, talk to him fairly often, and now he's hanging out in the lower 48.
Finally made it back.
That's right. Kenny, is it cold up in Kansas? Part of the reason Chico's here, and I'm so glad he's here with me, is we're going to make a run tomorrow. We're going to make a big circle through Oklahoma. We're going to start off. We're going to go pick up Mike Otto west of Gainesville in the morning at 6:30. We're going to go make 3 site visits tomorrow. Chico's got his video tools with him, his cameras and things and audio stuff, and we're going to shoot a video about how to build a lake. So we're going to start off with a lake near Lindsay, Oklahoma, which is I'm going to tell you this, if I rated lakes like my top 5 in terms of design, where it was designed well, but more importantly, the landowner interpreted it and then did it.
And was able to communicate it.
Yes.
That's amazing right
there. This would be number 1.
Well,
And
I can't wait.
And there's no water in it tomorrow. We're going to get to go video some beautiful fish habitat at different levels, spawning beds here, spawning beds there, brush over here, bass structure over here. He literally took about an 8 or 9 acre site and made it as close to perfect as anything I've seen in my mind and in reality. So I'm pretty excited about that. Then we're going to shoot around Oklahoma City, head up toward Beggs, Oklahoma, which is southwest of Tulsa, and you go look at a couple of lakes there that are nearing completion. Spend a couple hours there, do some video footage there, and we're going to video Otto and I talking about building dams and building lakes, so that'll be part of the video. And then our last stop at the end of the day is near Cheeto, Oklahoma, which is kind of east of Durant. And then we're going to shoot back and see if we can get out ahead of that storm that's hammering you guys in the Midwest. So that's where we're going.
We'll see.
Yep. So I'm kind of excited.
I'm looking forward to it.
And what do you think you're going to see tomorrow, Chico?
Well, after seeing Lake Deanna, which to me was an
Yeah.
amazing property, a real legacy property. For you to say that this one here might be better than that,
Yep.
it's got to be impressive.
It's got,
I can't wait to see it.
Lake Deanna
It's incredible. It's amazing.
It is incredible.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's a better lake than Lake Deanna, but it's like 65 or 70 acres. Where this is a smaller lake that has everything perfect. Like Lake Deanna, we didn't go up there when we were there, but way up in the far end, there's a lot of shallow water that's going to choke the plants. Mm-hmm. But it's such a big watershed that we decided to leave that alone because the bang for the buck to move the dirt, just to add that much more depth, wasn't worth it. Plus, we wanted to turn that into a natural filter for because the water is going to be coming in off of cropland on that particular lake. So, when I help design a lake, I'm thinking about everything from what's in the watershed to how fast the water moves, calculating the volumes of water, thinking about the dam. I don't design any dams ever. I don't do that. That's out of my wheelhouse. I'm not an engineer. I can look over the shoulder of one and understand what he's doing.
You guys messed that one up. That's what he can do.
But when it comes to the fish habitat stuff, that's what's really, really fun. Look at there. There's Dave Weber checking in from Kansas, up north. He's northeast of Kansas City. Trey Carpenter. Trey's down in Burnett. He's a retired Parks and Wildlife Department wildlife biologist that now has a side hustle helping people with ponds and managing ranches for big deer and things like that. So he's enjoying his retirement.
I'm noticing it's turning into big business.
Oh, it's huge. That's a huge business. Kendall Brown. You know Kendall?
I don't.
Well, he's telling me to look out, so there must be something going on behind us, and it ain't you.
No.
All right, so we're going to be doing that. That'll be a really fun road trip. If you guys have some questions, bring them on. We'll be talking about it, answering your questions for you. And then we're going to go eat catfish after this is over. So let me make sure I haven't missed anything. We got 51 viewers right now, Chico. That's
very nice, yeah.
That's bigger than normal.
Yeah, we got a couple shares going here.
Okay, there we go. That's good. Chico's sharing it. You guys be sure and share this to your timeline. I'm trying to build an audience, or otherwise Facebook tries to make us pay for them to build us an audience, which I don't quite get that, but there we go. Mike Cook, Boy Scout camp up from around Greensboro, North Carolina, if I remember right. So let's take some other topics. So what we're going to be talking about tomorrow is we're going to have Otto in the truck. And so one of the things I really want to talk about, Mike is a champion lake builder. And Drew Hay is on here, I noticed him a while ago, and so is Michael Gray. Those three guys, I would put them in a class by themselves when it comes to building lakes. And there's another running buddy of ours, he watches this show, Mississippi. He's a great lake builder as well. He just kind of keeps a lower profile. But we're going to talk about a couple of topics, like what it takes to build a dam. So one of the take-home points for all you guys, even if you've got an existing pond, I just got off the phone with a guy that emailed me a referral from Tim Kennedy, who watches this show sometimes. He's got a pond in a neighborhood in a little suburb around Tyler, Texas. And over the years, it just started off as a stock pond, half an acre, 3/4 of an acre, something like that. Not real big. But what happened was, as they built up the area and developed it, there was more concrete, more rooftops. Therefore, more runoff coming down the pipe, and funneling into the lake. Well, over the last 3 or 4 years, it's chewed up his spillway, and his spillway is eroding all the way back now to the pond. And he's worried that the next few rains is going to blow that spillway out, which, looking at the pictures, that's likely. Mm-hmm. So as you're thinking about your pond, from time to time, it's wise to go inspect the dam and see what kind of erosion you've got going on. Now, in this video we're putting together, we're going to put in the Institute of Higher Pondology, because it's going to be premium content that you can't find anywhere else. There's one set of B-roll that we shot that shows a brand new dam that is so eroded, I probably bet you there's 20 dump trucks worth of dirt that's eroded right down the slope, straight down into that lake. Mm-hmm. And it's because that they weren't able to get that bare dirt vegetated. Vegetation is a big deal. If you can't vegetate it, riprap it when you first build it. But here's the dam's job. The dam is a structure. Its job is to retain water and impound it, and then release excess water in an orderly fashion. That's the dam's job. So it's just like a building. It's built on a foundation, at least it should be, and it's a structure. And that's its job, is to impound water, then release excess water slowly, orderly, and release it downstream where it does no damage anywhere. That's the dam's job. Now, behind that dam is a living, breathing entity that we call our lake or a pond. And that's the fun part for the old pond boss. I get to go help people design the habitat that's most conducive for the different fish species that they want in there. So in other words, we need spawning beds for bluegills if you want bluegills, bass, fathead minnows, golden shiners, red ear sunfish, whatever the species, smallmouth bass. I've designed a bunch of habitat for smallmouth bass in the Midwest from Illinois to Iowa, even up toward, done some a little bit in Minnesota, so designing smallmouth bass habitat gives the smallmouth bass an edge. The lake in Kansas City, that landowner, he said, hey, I really want some walleye. Well, heck, he's got a sheer drop off on one side that was a creek bank where the water's about 50 feet deep now, and that creek bank is probably 25 feet tall. Well, there's dirt at a slope right above that cliff. So he had a bunch of sheet pieces of rock, and he went and got those pieces of rock like flagstone looking, and he laid out almost what looks like a mosaic patio along that slope so that dirt doesn't slough off and fall down that slope. So we actually, by design, created some walleye habitat for that lake. So the habitat design, that's one thing I love to do, and it's really fun, and it's important. It's important.
And the walleye are growing. They're growing.
Oh, yeah. They're huge.
Doing great.
Yeah, it's amazing how big those things are getting. Drew Schmidt, when measuring water temperature to start feeding, what depth should I take it? 3 feet deep. Check it at 3 feet deep. And if you check it there and do it in the afternoon, you're going to have a pretty good idea as to what it's truly going to be, because it's going to fluctuate a little bit through the course of the day. When you have a high and a low, like what we got coming up now, here in North Texas, it's supposed to be, I think, 30 in the morning and 68 tomorrow afternoon. So if you check the temperature at 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon at 3 feet deep, that's going to give you a pretty good idea. Roy Snellgrove, good evening from south of Mississippi. Dustin, do any of them build lakes in Oklahoma? There's several people that build lakes in Oklahoma, and we're going to be talking with one of them. His name escapes me. If you want to get some contacts of good earth movers, I know 2 or 3 good earth movers in Oklahoma. And Otto would come up and consult in Oklahoma as well. But anyway, it's a good time to introduce Mississippi grass shrimp. Filamentous algae is starting to grow, and so are the spatterdock here in Maryland. If you can acquire them, go ahead and do it. Because along the Atlantic seaboard, you're going to be less influenced by harsh temperatures because you're close to the ocean. So I would say go ahead and do it. Let me see here. Wesley Ellis. Bass will be spawning here soon in Georgia, so I read somewhere that you should take out all the males if you want trophy bass potential. So also remember that the only way to tell a male and a female is if you push in their belly and sperm comes out. We just got rated X, boys. That's a male.
Can you
that.
Say belly? You can.
You can say. I guess you can say belly. Yep. So that's one way to do it. Now, what I do is I kind of take this time of year, it's really pretty easy to tell a male from a female because the female her ovaries are full, so her belly is going to be more distended and larger, and the male's belly is going to be a little bit more concave and thin and kind of rigid. So when I'll take a male bass, here's his mouth, here's his tail, and I'll just run my fingers like that to see if any white milt comes out. And I do that just for my own information. I usually already know that's a male. But the males are going to be thinner, smaller, and their bellies are not going to be rotund. So, there's Mike Cottrell over in Palapena County, Texas. He was out fleshing a beaver. Have you, I'm going to leave that right there.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. Have you ever, I need to say this properly.
Once or twice. I I don't know.
Have you ever skinned a beaver then cooked it? That's where I want to go.
No.
I haven't been that hungry, but
Nope.
I'd kind of like to do that now, just one time before I die. Is eat some fresh, skinned out Conibear 330 trapped beaver.
Okay.
There we go. Billy is asking, is it a good idea to use dredge spoil to help recreate an eroding shoreline? It is not. Now, and the reason is that soil is usually so loose that it can't hold tight. So what I'm going to suggest that you do, take a look at, and Tim Stewart cooked the beaver. Tell us what it tastes like. So, oh Lord, Mark Williams, he's up there in Mountain Home, Arkansas. He found us. That's great. Now I lost track of where I was. Oh, using dredge spoil. There's a company called, it's something Sox, SOXX. They've advertised in Pond Boss before, but they've got this really cool organic fabric that's built to where you can put it along a shoreline and pump the dredge spoils into that and then staple it into the shoreline. And then it holds that soil in place, and it doesn't take long at all, and plants begin to grow on it, and it creates new shoreline. So it's I can't think of it. Just look up, do something like dredge, Google dredge and socks, SOXX, and look for that product. That would be a good way to use dredge spoils. But if you're going to use dredge spoils, odds are high that it ain't going to happen. Because that soil is so loose that it'll end up falling back into the pond. So whenever somebody dredges the pond, it's better to get that material out and do something else with it, like put it on the backside slope or haul it into a field and cover it with topsoil or something like that. There's Harrison Davis checking in. He's over in Georgia.
You can't put it in the sun and reuse it, or
no, because what happens? See, because when you take silt out, most dredge spoils are real silty, and it's expanded. When you take it and you lay it out and it dries up, it shrinks and it cracks. Then when it gets wet, it turns into Jell-O pudding. So it's got to be, in order to be used, it's got to be mixed with some other soil that has a better consistency, and it's just not that good. Chuck Brinkman, good to see you from outside of St. Louis. Okay, oh boy, here we go.
Silk socks. Silk socks, yes.
Silk socks, okay, there you go.
SOXX.
Yes, SOXX, that's right. Michael Eric, Bob, have you ever eaten wild beaver? I have not. I'm kind of starting to want to. Use lots of barbecue sauce. Have had beaver stews like venison. I could kind of see that. Socks erosion, there we go. Dustin looked it up. Silk socks. Okay, y'all are coming in. Here it comes. Y'all are so good at this. You got my back. I can't remember this stuff sometimes. So, yeah, there you go. There's the answer to that question. So, never dreamed we'd be talking about beaver stew, but here we are.
Anything could come up.
Yeah.
You never know, huh?
Look at there. There's Ron Ardoin checking in, saying howdy. Mike McPherson, what's your opinion on doing hydro seeding your dam banks and your pond banks and dam? I like it. Otto likes it. Actually, Otto buys a fairly inexpensive mat and lays it down and then hydro seeds on top of that with some kind of a mulch. You know, you hear conflicting reports where if you put the seed in the water and then you squirt it out on this mat that it germinates too quick. I don't think that's the case, because the seed mixes that I've seen guys like Otto and Drew Hay use. Drew, you may chime in on this, and maybe Michael Gray, you can chime in on this too. It actually helps because the mat helps hold the dirt in place, and it holds that hydro seed, the mulch that the seeds ground into, mixed in with, giving it enough time to germinate so it doesn't wash down the hill and be part of the erosion problem. So I like that. Drew Smith. So now we're having a beaver
This has
cook-off.
gone. Yeah, it's gone right.
We've gone south.
It gets better
here.
after that. It gets better. Yeah, Lord.
We smoked it. It was like barbecue beef. All my grad school friends were big fans. That's because y'all grad school people are hungry.
There are people that eat that muskrat.
Yep.
He lead treated that.
He lead treated a muskrat in the pond yesterday. Billy Miller knows how to handle those things. So, Chico, tell us, just spend a couple of minutes talk about the Facebook page, Keep Austin Fishing, and how people responded to that, and what you were thinking about, and then the trends that you started seeing with some of that.
Oh, wow. Good question. Well, the trends came is that it started out big and then got smaller.
Why?
Because we found out that it had to... fishing was such a subject that was so sensitive to a lot of people, and everybody had an opinion, and really advanced fishermen wanted to jump in and bring in advanced stuff, and then newbie fishermen were really who the main audience was. But we needed both. We needed to have these advanced fishermen to be the kind of mentor and the knowledge base, and new people to kind of feed that whole thing and bring up. The whole idea was to advance fishing, give it a higher profile, and more than anything, get more people to do so. Doesn't matter the age, not kids or adults. So we've had to strike a balance. When we had a lot of people and a lot of activity and a lot of opinions, it tended to stifle down the new fisher, the new anglers.
Okay, was it just not friendly?
Yeah, it got to be a little vicious. It got to be
a little vicious.
A little bit. You know how it can be, and it's a little bit biting, and everybody has an opinion on which one you should keep, which you should throw back, you know what I mean, a slot limits. There's so many subjects that relate to it, and so we decided at some point that we were going to keep it below 10,000 members, and we have done that.
Okay.
So what we do is we cull them out. We get, if people aren't active,
So you basically figured out who your target audience was. You catered to that audience.
Lifestyle.
And it grew into that niche.
Yeah, lifestyle only, a community.
Yeah.
Pure lifestyle.
And
that's what we look for. People that had that in their profiles and that answered the questions when they tried to get into it. We had a few basic questions that centered around, is this lifestyle to you? Or why do you want to do this is the main thing. And a lot of people are like, I want to take my kids fishing. Well, that's a pretty good answer.
Heck yeah.
That's what we're looking for. And other people were, I want to find the best fishing spots. Well, that's not such a good answer, because it turned into a lot of kayak fishermen, boat fishermen, trying to basically decipher where the fish was caught rather than to pass along the information of how to fish.
Okay.
But anyway, so it's kind of evolved over the 10 years that it's been around to where it's now it's a very friendly atmosphere, and it's very community oriented. There's not a lot of outsiders in on it. And again, to get in, you can still get in. We would go over 10,000 if we could find 10,000 lifestyle people that keep it in their,
right,
in the forefront of what they do.
And it's regional rather than national.
And it's very regional.
That's Austin.
If somebody's asking, and we get a lot of people from the Philippines or a lot of other countries, then Facebook.
Yeah, there was a girl coming on there from Australia, pretty common.
But she's in the lifestyle. She's a local guide. She's one of these people that are taking
fits the niche.
Yeah, it really fit it. And so and there was a point where we realized we had a lot of new fishermen, anglers that were coming in that were women. And that was a really good demographic.
That's a big deal. Yeah, that's a great demographic.
We were beating the demographic that the sales industry was looking at by maybe double with female anglers. And then that brought kids in. So now we've got a lot. It's a kid-friendly kind of place. So... And that's what it's about, sharing your pictures, sharing your fishing adventures, sharing the site, sharing baits you use, techniques. No, there's no such thing as a dumb question. That was another thing that we had to get back around to this. This isn't, only for the only advanced anglers. And now what we have is some of the best anglers, advanced anglers, I think, that are in Texas, that are part of it and that are helping to...
And they're mentoring the young and experienced anglers. Billy Bates, there's a YouTuber named Flair that lives near the dentist. Mm-hmm. And they tricked all their buddies in a blind taste test into thinking beaver was filet mignon. I don't know, but that's what they said. I guess we're going to have to go trap a dadgum beaver. Hey, anybody got any extra beavers laying around? We're going to skin one and cook it now. Give me a month.
The wine industry did that too. And they would
The blind taste test.
the blind taste test would talk people into this $3 bottle of wine is the best wine ever made, and they would love it.
Yeah. Let's see here. Look at we got a couple questions. Harrison Davis. Okay, I have a question for you. Oh, it just skipped. Okay. Why do you think catfish seem to have such a legendary fighting endurance, especially compared to bluegill and largemouth bass? I'll tell you why. Bluegill and largemouth bass, their body conformation and body design is based for quick spurts. That's what they do. Where like a striped bass or a hybrid striper, they're built to run like a train, to go full bore down the track all the time. A channel catfish's muscle configuration is such that it can do a quick burst, but it's also configured to where if it needs to run, it can run. Now, what a catfish does when it starts getting tired, if you ever fight one all the way down to its end, it starts to twist. Mm-hmm. It starts spinning and spinning and spinning. And I learned that from the time when I was a kid trot lining fish in the Brazos River. If I came and a hook was all twisted all the way up to the, off the leader all the way up to the main line, that means the channel catfish got on it, was on it a long time, twisted, till the hook came out of its mouth. Right. But it's just their muscle configuration. Where largemouth bass are designed for a burst, for a burst, like 8 to 10 bursts, and a bass is done. A bluegill, it's going to run clockwise and just go round and around and around and around, and it's using its saucer shape as an advantage aerodynamically underwater to try to make its escape. But a channel catfish is going to fight the hook and run because its muscles are designed to let it do that. So there's Frank James. Frank says, as you know, I'm looking at a fish city or two, but I've heard differing accounts about bad artificial habitats tend to snag lures or allow fish to wrap lines and break off. What are your thoughts? I don't know of any structure that won't let, lures hang up, except for PVC pipe. Now, PVC pipe, since it's round all the time, you're not going to get hung up in a PVC pipe. But if you catch a fish, like in a PVC pipe structure, that fish can wrap you up in that structure, and then
the little arms in the
then you're going to get hung up. Yeah. But like mossbacks and some of the others, I have fished in those, and I have gotten hung up in those. But all it did was make me change techniques on what I was using. I'm not going to throw a crankbait through a brush pile, and I'm not going to throw a crankbait in the middle of mossbacks. But I'm sure happy to pitch a jig out there, or soft plastics, or even spinner baits. Something that's a little bit more weedless.
It's better than a Christmas tree, though. By far.
Yes, it is because of longevity. Now, the things I like about products, especially like mossback, is that their V-shaped limbs of recycled plastic are slightly rough, and as organic matter, as the organic matter comes down through the water column, these V act like a little catch basin, and it catches that stuff. And I've watched them begin to grow plants out of the leaves, and they'll cover with paraphyte and bacterial colonies and create a food chain in the vertical column of the water that otherwise would not be there. So I'm a big fan of that. So not only do I like them because that they attract fish, I like these artificial plastic habitats because they're a substrate to help create a food chain. Frank James has an extra beaver. Well, you know what? I'd come and get it, and I'd skin it, and then I'd cook it just for fun, because now I'm intrigued with it, and I've never really been that hungry. Okay, Drew Hay, completely agree. Hydro seeding with a mulch blanket is a great method. Depends on the degree of the slope. That does make a difference. There is also a tackifier available for steeper grades. Sometimes it can be done just with hydro seeds, simply blown on mulch, straw, or some time of, let me see if I can click on that and make it come up here, Chico.
Which one?
Oh, there it goes. Straw or some type of mulch is very important, as it helps hold moisture to aid in growth as well as stop erosion. Bingo. Again, it depends on the degree of the slope. Yep, which that makes a big difference. You're not going to plant seeds on a 1-to-1 slope and expect them to do really, really good unless you have something adhesive to hold that stuff there. Hello, Leah Gruns. Good to see you. Dustin Brown. Oh, Dustin's tagging Brian, so they must be kin. Yeah, Justin Ludwig. There's always a strong Oklahoma showing tonight. That's pretty dang cool. Danny Mack, a 20-pound, 32-inch channel cat does what it wants. That's absolute truth. A 20-pound, you're not going to horse a 20-pound channel catfish into your boat. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to let it wear itself out without getting hung up, without wrapping around something, without running around your motor and trapping up in the lower unit of the propeller. You know, so there you go. I'm going to take a minute since it's 7:05. Say thank you to our sponsors. Purina Mills, I see the questions. I like that. I'll get to them here in a minute there, Billy. Purina Mills, I can't say enough good things about him. I talked to David Nelson earlier in the week, and he was on the road headed to Fort Stockton, Texas for a horse show, I think. And I've got a great relationship with those guys. I've told this story over and over, how they work really, really hard to create the best products for us to use. You know, and I'll be the first one to backhand a little bit and say, yeah, sometimes even though the products are great, distribution needs a little bit of help. But the problem is the dealers oftentimes don't quite understand how to play the game. So it's up to guys like y'all and us that when we want a product, no matter who the manufacturer is, if there's a dealer, we've got to convey that to the dealer.
Order it.
Yeah. And like with Purina, they'll get it. You know, sometimes the dealer's going to say, well, I can't get that. Yeah. That's not true.
You can get it.
They can. If he's a Purina dealer, he can get that product.
And their trucks go everywhere.
Yes.
There's nowhere they don't go.
They've got distribution all over the place. Texas Hunter Products, they've just come out with a lineup of aquatic habitat, fish habitat, fish structure. It's fun to see how that's developing. I just got the price list on it. I had a little bit of sticker shock, but there's an article coming out in the March-April issue of Pond Boss, and I'm hoping you get by the end of April. My bad. That talks about these different products, about artificial structure. Frank, I'll probably send you that article because it's going to be a while before you get the magazine. And since you're thinking about these products, I'm going to go ahead and send it to you. I'll email it to you. But a great article in there about the influence of habitat compared to the influence of a lack of habitat. And how do you decide whether to use artificial structure or go put a bunch of Christmas trees in there in concrete blocks? You know, there's some bona fide empirical research notated and discussed in that article. So the March-April issue of the magazine that is just now coming out is a pretty important one if you're talking about renovating habitat in a pond. Easy Docks of Texas, David Schneiderman. I haven't seen him up here yet, but I got a feeling he's watching. Appreciate his sponsorship. He's a good, loyal Pond Boss advertiser. And, take a look at Easy Docks of Texas, and you can see what he's got going on. Billy Bates, talk about your thoughts on feeding sinking pellets versus floating pellets. Reading a lot of old threads on the forum, and it sounds like a lot of the longtime pellet feeders prefer a large percentage of sinking food better than floating food. I prefer floating food, and the number one reason why is you can see the fish eat it. You know, and the majority of the fish that are going to eat it aren't likely to pick it up off the bottom.
Yeah, they're going to get it quick.
Yeah, bluegill, if you feed true sinking feed, those pellets are too big for bluegill to eat. They sink rapidly in the water, hit the bottom. Now, if you're feeding catfish or tilapia only, and that's your target species, or gizzard shad, sinking pellets are fine. Now, part of the problem with sinking pellets is they're typically not animal-based protein. Now, there might be some beef tallow or something like that in it, but the good floating fish foods are fish meal-based, higher nutrition with a higher conversion rate and a higher consumption rate. The part of the reason I would prefer floating pellets over sinking pellets is when those sinking pellets hit the bottom and they don't get consumed, they break down and they become a test into the water chemistry, the water quality, because they'll start to degrade when they get wet, break down and try to decompose right there at the water-soil interface on the bottom of the lake. So what's going on is the biological oxygen demand is so high at that interface, it becomes anaerobic. So that feed, and I've seen it over and over and over, it will lay there on the bottom of the pond, break down into little layers of the ingredients, and then cover it with mold under the water.
Wow.
And if anything eats that, it's not healthy. It's toxic, which they won't eat it because it doesn't taste good, and it's not palatable. So it adds to the water quality degradation. So that's why I don't like to use sinking pellets. Now, if I had a pond full of catfish and you could see them consume that food, by all means, feed it. If you want to try to grow some tilapia only or tilapia with catfish, feed it. That's fine. But if you're growing different species, different sizes of the different species in a game fish pond, the fish that are going to eat the fish food are going to be minnows, and they're going to be bluegill primarily. So it'll be golden shiners or fatheads along with bluegills. The largemouth bass won't eat it. Red ear sunfish won't eat it unless they've been trained at a fish farm, and that's not common. Hybrid stripers will eat it. Tilapia will eat it. Channel catfish will come up and eat it. So I like to feed that, even though it costs quite a bit more, because you can see your efficiency and you can see your fish eat it. There you go. Tommy Welsh, let's see what Tommy's saying here. I wanted to have my pond dug out bigger and deep. Different people said they would leave the pond be. They said don't mess with an old pond. It could leak. What's your opinion? That's a great question because I just had that conversation with the guy around Tyler because depending on where you are, a lot of ponds that have been built in the day, which in the day to me means 50s, 60s, and 70s, and even up until today, there's ponds where the soil is questionable, but they come across a vein of clay, not enough clay to totally build a dam with, but enough clay that they can make a clay liner. And I have seen in my 42 plus years of doing this, a number of ponds where, especially during a drought, when they go mostly dry and people get equipment in there and clean them out and make them deeper, and you can't tell that thing had a liner in it at one point because the liner's got 4 feet of silt on it, and breached that liner.
Pulled the plug.
Yeah, and so basically you're pulling the plug on the bathtub and causing it to leak. So I think some due diligence by the earth mover would be smart. Dig some test holes around the edge of the pond, see what you got 6, 7, 8 feet down there. If those soils are porous and your pond's like 5 feet deep, it may have a clay liner in it. And it's in that case, it's still smart to go back on top of it with a clay liner if you have the clay. So, and plus, here's another thing. All right, when you're going to clean out a pond, that dirt is going to be moved at least 3 times. Think about that. You're going to drain the water down, and you got to get the dirt out. Well, it's wet. I don't care how long it sits. It can sit 3 years. But when you pick those dried chunks off the top and you get down underneath it, it's wet. So you got to get that dirt out and pile it up somewhere to let it dry, which means you got to move it out of the pond, move it to where you want it to sit for a little bit, and then come back and move it a third time to spread it out and level it out and cover it up. So when you start looking at the cost of moving dirt 3 times, one of the things I'll tell folks, I said, hey, let's compare what it would take to build a brand new pond just downstream and fill that one up. Push the dam back in it, cover it up, plant grass on it, and mow it. How much would it cost to not deal with this old pond compared to what it would cost to build a brand new one? And see if that cost doesn't make more sense. Now, there's a lot of places where you just can't do that because, you're at the very bottom of the watershed on your place, so you can't do anything about it. So, Christopher Aguilar is waving at us. He is the Boudin King from down Lake Charles, Louisiana. All right, who would you recommend for F1 hybrid bass in Oklahoma east of Ada? I'll tell you what, go to the resource guide at pondboss.com. Click on the resource guide, and there's several good ones. One of my favorites is American Sportfish Hatchery because they produce them over in Alabama near Montgomery. And check them out. But go to the resource guide and you can see. Okay, Bruce Condello's giving us a big round of applause. I got to talk to Bruce, I think yesterday or the day before. Got to talk to Bruce firsthand, check in with him. Michael Gregory, I just stocked 100 pounds of 4 to 5 inch shiners in my 10-acre lake with good vegetation cover in north central Texas today. There's a strong population of bluegills. Any pointers for me? Yes, I do. Part of the reason you want those shiners is you want them to reproduce. Golden shiners lay their eggs on grass around the edge of a pond. If you don't have grass, now they might stick their eggs on woody cover, but they're going to stick their eggs on something. And if you don't have anything, go buy 3 or 4, or let's see, 10-acre lake, go buy about 4 or 5 square bales of coastal hay, break them up into chunks, and just drop them along the edges. Now, they may not stay there, with the winds we're getting ready to have in the next few days with this next Arctic front coming down from the north. But when that hay moves up against the shore and kind of sits there in the waterlog, those golden shiners will stick their eggs all over that hay, and you'll get a little bit better spawning rate if you do that. And if you bought 100 pounds of those 4 to 5 inches long, they're egg laden right now. So you've got about 2 or 3 weeks to make sure. Now, if you've already got pondweed, if you've got Bermuda grass over the edge of the pond sticking in the water, if you've got brush piles, things like that, they'll stick their eggs on that. But if you don't, get them some substrate for spawning. And they'll also come to fish food. Harrison Davis. Okay, well, catfish sure do seem to have a lot of muscle. I was wondering if it had anything to do with possibly low oxygen needs or a higher storage capacity. No, it really doesn't. Now, one thing that happens with catfish is it takes a little bit longer for their muscles to metabolize and kick out the lactic acid. Where with largemouth bass, that happens really fast because they exert so much strength, with a bass's thrust and how quick they move, and it's like a to me it's like a finesse boxer compared to a sumo wrestler.
Yeah, quick twitch muscles.
Yeah, quick. That's good. Good stuff. Quick twitch muscles. All right. Billy says, what criteria do you use to determine if you need to add an automated feeder to a pond or lake? I talked to the landowner, and I mean, Chico, you've traveled around with me some.
Yeah.
Throw some thoughts out there about feeding the fish from your standpoint.
Well, I think you got control. I think more than anything, you got a little bit of something that you can control with it, and you can physically see what the when you go to harvest them, you can see those numbers too.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a better harvest. But kids, and to bring them, attract them close to a dock or to a certain spot on the lake so you can fish, it's a really good reason to have one. I mean, that's what we look for.
Yeah.
Just go buy the feeder.
Well,
and then go watch the feeders and see, what that they may not eat your bait because they want the feed, but you're going to be raising some healthy
yeah,
fish.
and
grain-fed fish. Grain-fed.
Part of that there is when that feeder goes off, it goes off for about 5 seconds. And it takes them maybe 2 minutes to eat it. So that leaves 23 hours and 58 minutes the feeder's not going off and they're not eating it, So it's not like it's going to totally condition them away from natural food. It won't do that, but it typically supplements the feed. Now, here's the criteria that I use. I'll talk to that landowner and ask their goals. What's the mission? And if it's when a guy that's 66 years old says, hey, I've got 10 grandkids that range in age from 2 to 15, and I want them to be able to come catch bluegill off the dock, he needs a feeder to bring the bluegill to the dock so those grandkids can catch them. Another criteria is I really want to speed up the process. So I want to make my fish grow faster. Well, feeding the fish a good high-quality fish food speeds up the process. It makes those fish grow faster, those fish that eat fish food. The third thing that happens with it is if they want their fish that eat fish food, especially bluegills, if you want them to be able to reproduce better, well, better nutrition leads to better fecundity. Better fecundity leads to better spawning rates. Better spawning rates lead to higher hatch rates, which leads to better survival rates.
Keep them healthy.
Keep them healthy.
Yeah.
Yes, and then the final thing, one of the criteria is if somebody says, I want to grow 2-pound bluegills, you're not going to grow 2-pound bluegills in a pond unless they're fed. I've seen it over and over and over and over. If you grow a 2-pound bluegill in a pond where the bluegill aren't fed, I want to see it, because there's only
They're,
one.
they're eating something.
Yeah, and there's only one that figured out how to play the game in there and was able to grow fast enough, early enough to get the gain it needed by year 6, 7, 8, just before it dies, it hits 2 pounds. So feeding them to grow them big, better nutrition for reproduction, to speed up the process, and to attract fish where you want them. There's your 4 criteria that I look at with everybody when we talk about it. Jeff Wall and Ice off in Central Illinois. Time to enjoy my lake. There you go. Mike McPherson is 5 pounds of good bacteria block too much for a half-acre, 25-foot maximum depth pond. Says it will treat up to a 5-acre pond. No, it's not too much, because what happens is bacteria reproduce exponentially based on the temperature and what they have to eat. And as they, it goes back to that question, would you rather have $1 million in your hand or a penny doubled every day for 30 days? Take the penny. Bacteria are that penny. But what happens is they're gonna multiply exponentially until they reach that critical mass point where they're overeating their food. And bacteria's job is to go in and eat everything it can, and then it dies off. And that's the way it works in a pond. So if you put in 5 pounds, you're doing no harm, just adding more than you need. That's it. So I'd probably take a pound and put it out there, and well, of course it's in a block, so you'd have to chop it up, but you're not overdoing it, because the bacteria won't allow that. There's nothing toxic about those bacteria. It's not like if you're putting too much herbicide or too much chemical or too much bleach or something. That's not going to cause any harm. Danny Mac, someday I'll make the 260-mile trip to Overton Fisheries for the Saturday market. There you go. Drew, hey, Bob, do you know of anyone who has done a study on anaerobic bacteria and impact on creating a methane release? I have found conflicting articles. I just got an email message from Bruce Kanya with Floating Islands International today, talking to me about a project that he's working on that with anaerobic bacteria, and he's working with a development somewhere up there in Montana. So I'm going to ring his number when I got time in the next couple of days and catch up with him. Let's see. Mark Williams. Yo, Bruce, does Bob need to put signs up at Pond Boss Conference to say that if you're a dentist, wear real shoes? Look at there. All right, so they're kind of messing with each other. Hey, Bob, this is Elena Brinkman. Hey, Elena. Listen, this girl, it's Chuck's daughter. They live outside of St. Louis. This girl loves to fish. She loves her fish.
Eating the lures, huh?
Oh, my gosh. Well, yeah. She said, I was wondering if it's unhealthy for the bluegill to eat the rubber lures. It's unhealthy for a fish to swallow a rubber lure. It's not unhealthy to catch him with one. Elaine, that's a great question, because what happens is they can't digest that rubber. So as long as the piece is small enough, if they do swallow it, that they can pass it, then they're okay. But what tends to happen is rubber tends to collect in the gut cavity of fish. Now, I've seen largemouth bass digest a fish hook that it swallowed. I've seen it. I mean, I've electrofished those fish, picked them up, seen the shank of a hook coming out of their vent, reach down there and pull it out, and there's a piece of monofilament that long attached to the shank of the hook, but the curve of the hook is gone. It got digested in the fish.
The acid just took it.
Yes, but also, I guess the most poignant one I can remember is I had a guy call me one time and said, hey man, I've caught a couple of bass that really are unhealthy, but most of my bass look great. I said, well, if you catch another one, put it on ice and send it to me overnight. He did. He FedExed it to me. And I cut that bass open. That bass should have weighed 4 pounds, weighed less than a pound. I mean, it looked horrible. I have to dig that picture up and share it one of these days. But what had happened was that fish he was taking his spent lures. Most of them looked like little salamanders, watermelon-colored salamanders, and he just threw them in the lake. Well, this particular bass had some kind of a fetish for those baits, and he would swallow it. And one of them was a hard head. Mm-hmm. Where the head of the lure was firmer. Okay. And it got caught in the back of the fish's stomach, where it goes into its intestine, and it couldn't push through. Well, there were 5 different soft plastic lures in the gut cavity of that one fish. So he caught the fish because it was hungry. But the fish couldn't digest any food because it couldn't pass through its stomach. So that fish basically was starving to death because of the bait.
Slowly, yeah.
Because it ate all those plastic lures. So They can't digest those lures. If it's small enough, they can pass it. But there you go. There's your answer. Chico, it's 7:24 already. My gosh, we've
wow.
This hour
That goes fast.
This hour flies by, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So we're going to start kind of wrapping up. We're going to do a little road trip tomorrow and see if we can't stay ahead of this little Arctic front that's coming. So we're going to... Now, Chris Blood would get on to me if I didn't say this. You know, I'm not always comfortable talking about old Bob, but don't forget about pondboss.teachable.com, where the Institute of Higher Pondology resides. So if you guys are getting ready to build a lake or you've got one that you want to make better, we've got great videos, many of which Chico has put together to help you not pay the dumb tax. But now I paid Chico to do it. So I do want to recover a little bit of money because you can't buy, you can't just get good for cheap. You gotta hire somebody that's really good at what they're doing, and that's what we did with Chico.
That's why they call you.
Oh yeah. That's why I called you. You know, so anyway, if you get a chance, go to pondboss.com. Look at the Institute of Higher Pondology. Look at Ask the Boss. A lot of good information out there for y'all that want it. And happy to be of any service we can. If you have questions, need some personal one-on-one help, send an email to info@pondboss.com. But check out the Institute. If you haven't subscribed to the magazine, you got to do that. There we go. Mm-hmm. I say this every week. $35 a year. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year.
The recipes alone are worth $35 a year.
Yeah. Oh, we might end up with a beaver recipe if we play our cards right.
Somebody do one.
I can't think of a better way to end this show.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in. I don't know where I'll be next Wednesday, but I know it's going to be hanging out. Oh, I know where I'll be. We're going to be at Cousin Camp in Granbury. Memes has invited, I think, 7 or 8 grandkids to come hang out with us. And we're going to be doing that. So I'm probably going to have Rugrats chasing me around next Wednesday, but I will still be hanging out with you for this hour. So until next Wednesday, thanks for hanging out, and we will see you then. Adios.